the Deng's moral innovation of profit is good, actually unlocked a wealth on the order of $100 trillion over this like couple of decades from the 80s, like the wealth that was produced, if you compare it maybe to North Korea, how they are still poor, and or countries like that, and so maybe China would end up something like North Korea, but much bigger, and maybe it's just like militaristic and this and that, but like now, okay, at least Chinese population benefited from this rise and this capitalism, like hundreds of millions of people rose from poverty. And it had some second order effects, which like, okay, now the China is stronger militarily, but generally, like the global trade should, okay, it's a complex topic, but it's on balance, it's good, because people, it's better if people trade with each other than if they fight each other. It's like sublimation of warfare into something different. It's like into commerce or into politics, into trade.
Hello, welcome back to Mtambo's Desk podcast. My name is Jakub Mtambo, and the following is a conversation with Jakub Simek, a co-founder of Shadao and an author of Wisdom Enterprising. In today's episode, I'll be talking with Jakub Simek about his article, Longevity as the $100 trillion Unlock, under the daily Balajisms series. And now, dear friends, here is Jakub Simek. Jakub, thank you once again for joining me at Mtambo's Desk podcast.
I think it's always great to talk to you.
Okay. In your article, you wrote about how the rise of modern China can be traced back to Deng Xiaoping's moral innovation, and how it has created $100 trillion of wealth in China. Jakub, can you give us a brief overview of what inspired Deng Xiaoping's bold move to reform China?
All right, so there is like this story that Balaji Srinivasan talks about, actually published in NPR. It's like the secret document that transformed China. And it's basically some kind of treaty or some secret kind of deal between farmers in one province, where they basically started to practice capitalism. And Balaji says like the capitalism was punishable by death in living memory, in China. So in the 1970s, still. So basically they just like decided that they will keep their profits or part of their profits, like the part of the harvest. They will not give all the harvest to the collective. They will keep parts of it, and if they are caught, like some of them, and let's say executed, then the others will take care of their kids. It's like this was how the crazy the world was, just like, I don't know, a few years before I was born. Like let's say I was born in the 80s, so this was in the 70s.
Yeah.
And the Mao's cultural revolution was quite crazy. Actually, millions of people died, and this was still like kind of the aftermath, of it. And I mean, also we lived in communism, like socialism, but let's say in China it was even crazier. Than what our parents experienced. Like my parents both were political prisoners, for example, but the Chinese experiences are, I guess, quite more brutal still. And you have also some even worse cases like Pol Pot's Cambodia, but still, the profit and the capitalism was actually not allowed in China before Deng Xiaoping, and he came up, and this story might be apocryphal, but it's like also Balaji talks about it, and the NPR article was there a couple of years ago, and it's like kind of that's like the Deng gave the example of this story that these guys were almost like to be, I don't know, executed because they had some bountiful harvest, like some bumper harvest, and so. But Deng Xiaoping decided, like, actually they gave a good example and this should be followed, because it's like he had all these sayings that he developed, something like the backwards will be beaten, which actually combines both nationalism and rationalism, kind of, or patriotism and rationalism, because like the backward, it's like something that we need to be the first, like we need to be patriotic, but if we are not smart, then we will be beaten, so it's like also we need to be rational. We can't just say like, let's say America is number one in everything, which when it's not, let's say, but you need to be smart about it. And the same goes for all our countries. And so okay, and let's say also he had this saying like the white mouse, black mouse, it doesn't matter if it catches mice, so it's like it doesn't matter like what from where the innovation comes, if it comes from the west or from the east, or I don't know. But it's like what is important is that if the innovation works, then it's fine, and basically his moral innovation, just to use the language of Balaji Srinivasan, so Deng Xiaoping's moral innovation was that capitalism is good and profit is good, so let's say just like this single thing, profit is good, so it was like a byte flip from profit is bad, which is like let's say one of the tenets of communism, to profit is good, and so and then what they did actually was like they swapped the back ends but they kept the front end, so they kept the sickle and what is it, the hammer, like they kept all the logos and the flag and something. They even started some small war or something to keep the generals busy. But the big innovation was basically special economic zones, so you have like this, so they didn't start to reform the China all at once, which it would be like a big mess and probably it wouldn't be possible, but they started like with some coastal cities and like one zone after another, and if one zone worked, then they started another one. And you can see like they build they build and build and build, and now like I don't know, they build like in 15 years, they build like the last 15 years, this started like in the 80s and at the end of the 70s. The last 15 years they built like 38,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. The second country with the biggest high-speed rail network is Spain, with 2,000 kilometers. So they're like, I don't know, 20, almost 20x. And it's not about the size of the country or something, because the US has a smaller network than Spain. It's all about like just like the focus on infrastructure build out. So. But the special economic zones is actually a great innovation that can be used also in this article that we discussed now, is like the 100 trillion unlock of wealth could be provided by longevity. So it's basically the Deng's moral innovation of profit is good actually unlocked a wealth on the order of $100 trillion over this like couple of decades from the 80s, like the wealth that was produced, if you compare it maybe to North Korea, how they are still poor, or countries like that, and so maybe China would end up something like North Korea, but much bigger, and maybe it's just like militaristic and this and that, but like now okay, at least Chinese population benefited from this rise and this capitalism, like hundreds of millions of people rose from poverty, and it had some second order effects, which like, okay, now the China is stronger militarily, but generally like the global trade okay, it's a complex topic, but it's on balance it's good, because people it's better if people trade with each other than if they fight each other, it's like sublimation of warfare into something different. It's like into commerce or into politics, into trade. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like you compete, let's say you compete, it's still not like you compete, you want to, I don't know, beat, let's say, South Korea to produce better EVs, like electric cars, but but it's like sublimated into like this or virtualized conflict, you're competing in economics and you're not fighting with your weapons or something. So it's definitely this capitalist turn was great for China, and also for the world, partially at least.
Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting point. I think one of the most fascinating things about this story is how a single bit flip in thinking can lead to such massive wealth creation. But in your article, you also mentioned Balaji Srinivasan's perspective on why it is easier to start a new country than to reform the FDA. Can you share more or briefly about that?
Yeah, so Balaji was like on a short list to become, if not head, then maybe number two at FDA during Trump's administrations, like when after Trump won. So, but he kind of refused that offer, or like he didn't take it because actually, if you become, let's say, head of FDA or something like that, let's say close, like some secretary there, actually are not running it like a CEO, because you can't fire like those bureaucrats. It's like because they have like either like their jobs are permanent or they would need to like the conditions are quite strict, like you need to, I don't know, you would need to have some really serious violations and then like repeated violations. And it's like really not that easy to fire like state employees and bureaucrats. And it's not, you're not the boss of a company. It's a ceremonial kind of it's more of a ceremonial kind of position. It's different from being a CEO where you can like Elon Musk. It's like a 70% of Twitter employees disappeared, and the Twitter, I don't know, has new features and it's running. And I mean, it's sad for those employees, but like the service still works. And so for FDA, okay. First, like they're like a big regulator, and Balaji talks about like or a globally dominant regulator. And Balaji says that the global harmonization of regulation is like one of the greatest evils, because basically what China did, they had these special economic zones where basically they said like, okay, we have this harmonized society where let's say profit is bad, but we allow this small pocket of innovation, the special economic zone where the profit is good. That's like the moral innovation that we are testing in this small zone. And if you have like global harmonization of regulation, then the FDA and let's say the EMA, the EMA is like in the EU, these kind of regulators, then they like have power over all these like other national regulators, or these small national regulators outsource the regulation to these big countries. It's something like let's say a small website outsources the login to Facebook or to Google, so you don't need to build your own login, but people log in with Facebook or Google. But then it means kind of then these bigger guys have power over you. And so the FDA, I mean, it's, like it takes normally like 12 years, 10 years, or 8 years, I don't know, to approve a new medicine. And imagine you become let's say a boss of the FDA, like not the CEO, but like a director of the FDA, and you want to reduce the number of years from, I don't know, 10 to 1 year. It's not possible. It will not work. It's like I don't know, trying to reform Microsoft. And trying to get Microsoft to open to embrace open source. So basically, Microsoft actually embraced open source and they bought GitHub, but only after they saw like how Google got a strong dominant, and how the Google was like eating their lunch. So it's something similar. You can't just reform these like big bureaucracies and these big organizations what you can do is like try exit them. You know, you can't end the Fed, or you can't, but you can exit the Fed with Bitcoin. And in a similar way, you can't end the FDA, but you can exit the FDA and create some special innovation zones. Just taking the innovation of China, the special economic zones, and applying it to innovation in longevity. And in the same way, you know, as China got richer, maybe by 100 trillion over the decades, thanks to this moral innovation of profit is good. And if you take the moral innovation of self-improvement is good, and actually willing patient, willing doctor, as it was the case 100 years ago or something like that, and you can self-experiment. Like if you take the movies like Dallas Buyers Club or some others, like, you know, it's just like, or let's say yeah, it's basically people can you know, they have the right to buy the medicines they want, you know, and to test them, especially if they are seriously ill, you know. Like they shouldn't you know, if let's say you build in the US, they build statues for fictional drug dealers, like the Breaking Bad guys, you know, they have some statues there. And if bungee jumping is legal, says Balaji, you know, if bungee jumping is legal and all these like crazy other, I don't know, adrenaline sports are legal, then it should be also legal to I don't know, to get like off-label medicines and test them on you, or to let's say join some kind of challenge trial. It shouldn't be like compulsory, or you shouldn't be like pressured to take some kind of vaccine or take some kind of medicine, but it should be voluntary. But you should, if you are an adult and you want to test some kind of, let's say, nootropics, some cognitive enhancements, and some kind of or drugs, meaning medicines in this case, that are legal, but they're used for other purposes, and but they might have some other benefits. So this means like this off-label use of medicines, and let's say they may have some benefits for longevity, like for increasing health spans and lifespans. Yeah, you should be able to test them on yourself, like willing patient, willing doctor, and also like my body, my choice kind of thing. You know, it's it kind of unites also some liberal and also some conservative kind of viewpoints. And yeah, you should be able to find to establish your own special innovation zone, and let's say like the network archipelago or something like that. Yeah. So that's the idea.
Okay. That's a real thought-provoking perspective. Perspective, Jakub. I think Balaji is right. That exit is a fundamental right, and global harmonization can hold back progress in many fields. Can you share some thoughts on about special innovation zones for the longevity?
Yeah, okay. All right. So like just special innovation zone is something like, let's say, for drones. So you can have like something like drones are not actually legal, let's say, in the rest of the country. But here in this special innovation zone, let's say, I don't know, in Singapore, something like it could be some blocks of flats or some kind of area. Let's say they say, if you, it's like a sandbox or something like, so they, if you, let's say, if you pass some kind of test as a company, or if you are a this and this size of company, doesn't need to be too big or too small, or if you have some kind of credentials, or yeah, you passed some tests, then actually you can use drones for delivery. You can use robots, let's say, for delivery. And actually in Rwanda, you know, you have like delivery of medicines. So it's like, I think, the first country where the medicines are delivered by drones, you know. And you have like a company that operates like in 3 locations, delivering medicines to hospitals by drones, you know. So yeah, so it's possible, and you can have like this, I don't know. So for example, instead of just, okay, Rwanda is a relatively small country. So imagine if you have let's say a big country, but you only have like one county where you make this special innovation zone, let's say, possible, you know, or one city or something like that. And so this is the example of drones, but you could have examples for with longevity. It should be like, let's say, some treatments that are allowed in this area, or let's say you can use like off-label prescriptions. And you know, in the US you have like various ways how you can exit the FDA, like let's say through compounding pharmacies and through some kind of other CLIO labs. I think that Balaji talks about it. I'm not expert in these areas, but like, let's say you have some kind of similar kind of exit possibilities, and you will create another special innovation zone where you have like this moral innovation, or this one commandment, let's say the self-improvement is good, and you can like experiment with various kind of let's say nootropics, or various kind of fitness trackers with various off-label use of medicines, let's say, for some longevity purposes. And there is this researcher like David Sinclair, last time I couldn't remember his name, you know, we discussed, or David Huberman. And they you know, they are backed, like, you know, by Harvard, and they are backed by some like serious capital, but it's still just a very niche kind of area. And Balaji says like longevity and crypto are kind of similar, because they're inverting the basic premises of, like, let's say, the old establishment, where the longevity says like, actually health span is important, even like you don't want to, it's also like when you die in old age, it's also tragic, you know. It's not just like the early death is tragic, let's say if young people die out of some accidents, but it's also if you die in your 80s, it's tragic. But also, especially, the health span is important. So if the last years of your life or the last decade is kind of the health span is not there, you know, anymore, you are constantly sick, it's not good. And you could actually improve this by various medicines, but also by better fitness, by, let's say, some early diagnostic with some like fitness trackers, you know. It's like very, 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 very important, I think, piece of evidence here, or news or something, is like the FDA actually didn't approve Apple Watch to have some kind of sensors back in 2013 or something, you know. And even if they had those sensors, then you could kind of predict the COVID cases, you know, much earlier. You could have much better picture of the population, how they are like being infected. Because basically, there is no reason why, let's say, you can't have the thermometer here in this kind of watch, you know. It's just it's just a regulatory issue. You know, you could have you could have much more sensors than you have, you know. It's a regulatory issue for 10 years. Like, you know, you can see like how they delayed the stupid simple technology like thermometers and other sensors. They delayed it for 10 years because Apple then just like nerfed their Apple Watch. They said it's not worth the hassle, you know, to become like a regulated company with FDA and to like being like a regulated diagnostics company, and it would be even make the watch expensive and stuff like that, you know. So they just like said, okay, we will put less sensors there. But you see, like now that the pandemic hit after like the pandemic hit after 100 years, we had something like Yeah, like the bird flu or something pandemic. So now
Yeah.
we had the COVID, and actually we had if we had like better tracking, you could have like early diagnostics of like your body is not working well, or even just the stupid thermometer,
Yeah.
there, and we didn't have it, and so you could have like a special innovation zone where actually you can have as many sensors as you want, like in
Yeah.
your fitness trackers. As simple as that. It's basically like China made the special economic zone where the profit was good, It's like simple moral innovation, and you can make a special innovation zone where self-improvement is good, and you can have as many sensors as you want. You can experiment with off-label prescriptions, let's say, and you can, I don't know, you focus on fitness, let's as a backdoor to longevity or something like that, let's say. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I think the idea of special innovation zones for longevity, has a lot of potential, and it will be interesting to see how it develops in the coming years. Thank you so much, Jakub Simek, for joining us today and sharing your insights on the rise of modern China and its impact on technology and biotech. It was really a deep and thought-provoking conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Duke. I'm just like summarizing Balaji's ideas, but I hope there is some added value here and there from time to time. So thank you, our listeners that actually are keeping with us. So now this is like, yeah. I'm writing I need to actually write. I have like 1.5 hours to start writing and to finish an article and post it, to keep the daily Balajism kind of challenge running, and it's been almost 40 articles now. So this week we've managed today, tomorrow, and the after tomorrow we will get to 40. So let's see. We will then reconsider like how to improve. So let's see what to change. Maybe we'll do less frequent and longer articles, and let's see. But thank you that we are with us. Thank you, Duke, and thank you, our listeners and our viewers. Thanks.
Okay.
A good experiment.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. If you enjoyed listening to Mtambo's podcast, don't forget to subscribe, give this episode a thumbs up, and be sure to come back next week for another episode. Until then, this is Duke Mtambo, and don't forget to do good always.